Good morning, everybody. How is everyone today? Everyone have enough coffee? If at any point in time you need to go get more coffee, believe me, I'm not going to be, I won't get offended if you get up to get more food or coffee. I really appreciate everyone coming here today and listening what I have to say. My presentation, some of you have already heard the presentation, and it's great to see some familiar faces and also meet some new individuals. My presentation is very pragmatic. This is not about theory. This is hands-on information that I believe will be helpful to those who are not only in transition, and I realize that many of the individuals here are indeed in transition, since you mentioned that before. But even if you're not in transition, even if you just want to improve your LinkedIn profile for a variety of reasons, and everyone has different reasons, the information that I'm going to share with you will be helpful, I hope. I have created this information and share it with individuals primarily because I have been utilizing LinkedIn for about 10 years. I am one of the first million users of LinkedIn. LinkedIn now has 300 million users around the globe. Over the course of time, I have learned a lot about how LinkedIn works, and hopefully you already got a glimpse that I'm sort of a techie at heart. The fact that I am co-owner of a patent, I have learned certain pieces of how the LinkedIn algorithm works. And based on how the LinkedIn algorithm works, impacts your profile. And so this presentation is really meant to provide insight into changes that you should consider in your profile based on the LinkedIn algorithm and based on how people like me in search utilize LinkedIn as a tool to find talent. I want this presentation to be interactive. If you have any questions, by all means, ask them, okay? But first I'm going to ask all of you a question, and that is, how many individuals in this room do not have a LinkedIn profile? Excellent. So everyone has a LinkedIn profile. How many individuals in this room are actively seeking a new opportunity? Big chunk. That's great. Hopefully this information will be helpful to you. So I already said that the information that I'm going to present is very pragmatic. It's information based on the LinkedIn algorithm, and I've got to tell you, and I've been giving this presentation for a couple of years now, every time that I give the presentation, individuals reach out to me after the fact and say, this was the best information. I've heard a lot of presentations about LinkedIn, but I've never heard this kind of information, and this was really helpful. I also get kudos for how individuals end up changing their profile, and then they start getting greater traction in their job search. So hopefully you will walk away with the same experience. LinkedIn starts off with, and by the way, I am hooked into Wi-Fi, so at the end of all of this, we can go directly into LinkedIn and I can show you in real time or answer any questions. People like me in search, we utilize LinkedIn to identify talent. Identify talent regardless if they're a passive job seeker or an active job seeker. When we do a search, and we're utilizing LinkedIn as one of the many tools that we use, we tend to start off with what we call an advanced search. Some of you may be familiar with what an advanced search is all about. If you are not familiar with it, you should be using advanced search for identifying individuals who you want to network with, find individuals at specific companies, etc. But for the purposes of this discussion and this presentation, we're going to talk about advanced search and how individuals like me utilize it. So I'll open up a search page and I will start populating information in order to find individuals who fit my criteria. There are various secrets that impact your profile, but I wanted to first show you what the advanced search page looks like so you know where we're coming from. But the advanced search gives individuals like me capability to screen, shall we say, for a variety of criteria. When we're on an assignment and we're looking for a CFO, criteria number one is, are they currently a CFO? And there might be some additional criteria. But secret number one is that title is the single most important keyword that you need to be aware of. And examples, of course, are CEO, COO, and in your case, CFO or VP of Finance or any of the other designations that pertain to you. We, recruiters, tend to identify individuals who are currently doing similar work. So if I'm on a CFO search, I'm going to reach out to a CFO. But I'll also reach out to, as I mentioned earlier, VPs of Finance, etc. So we will either seek one level up or one level down. But the number one secret for LinkedIn is that your title is the most important keyword. Secret number two is additional uniquenesses. In the area of finance, if you have experience at a public company, that's important. Because public company experience is different than private company experience. So in your mind, you should realize that if you have public company experience, put it in your LinkedIn profile. If it's private company, put it in your LinkedIn profile. I will continue to give you additional secrets of where these words should be. If you are a CPA, make sure that you identify that little bit of information. If you have experience in mergers and acquisitions, and everyone's background is different, mind you, but you need to be aware of all of the uniquenesses in your own background, because ultimately that's going to help you. One thing I forgot to mention at the beginning, and that is, I know many of you are busy writing down lots of notes. I have an article form of this presentation, and if you send me an email later on today or tomorrow, I'm happy to share the article, so in case you end up missing a concept or whatever, don't worry about it. You'll get the information. So uniquenesses are very important. If you've gone through what I like to call corporate life-changing events. Corporate life-changing events are IPO, mergers and acquisitions, startups, divestitures. All of those corporate life-changing events that you might have been part of, those are wonderful things that you should be talking about in your LinkedIn profile. So make sure you add those. Secret number 3. The placement of keywords is very important. Now, this is really where the rubber hits the road. It's very important that your keywords are located in your summary, let me see, because I can't get up there. No, it's not exactly going to work. In your summary title, right here, make sure that CFO, VP of Finance, any other titles that pertain to you, any other titles of roles that you would be interested in, make sure that those titles are in your summary title. Because the number one place that the LinkedIn algorithm looks at for keywords, when I enter either keywords or a title for the keywords, is that summary title. The second most important place are current title and past titles. The current title is very important, and for those of you who are in transition, there often is a void in terms of a current title because you're considering yourself as not being a CFO right now. You just left your past employer. Well, guess what? My recommendation is create a placeholder for a current role and create a placeholder for all of those titles that you would be interested in terms of your next assignment. And the reason for that is the LinkedIn algorithm. If somebody like me does a search for a CFO, the people who float to the top of the list of the query that I get are individuals who have CFO in their summary title, CFO in their current title, and then CFO in past titles. If you do not have a current title, a current role, and by current I mean that the timetable goes from, let's say, last month, July of 2014, until present. If you do not have a current title, you are going to float farther down the list. And your goal as a job seeker is to be at the top of the list, right? So, yes?
Do we reflect that as CFO in transition?
You be creative. You can say, that's a great question. Should that current title be CFO in transition? It could be. Some individuals do some consulting, and if you're doing consulting, I just caution you to use the word consultant. Don't forget to somehow be creative in your description of yourself, that you are perhaps an interim CFO, an acting CFO, but again, don't forget the VP of Finance and et cetera, all the other titles that you might be interested in. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Yes.
We will move on. Secret number 4. Now it seems like we're going fairly fast, but I want plenty of time for Q&A, and there's a few more pieces of information beyond the 7 secrets. Secret number 4. The number of times that the keyword appears impacts how high up you end up being in the search query. If you have only one mention of CFO, then you're going to be pretty far down on the search query that I run. If you have 5 mentions, 10 mentions, nobody can predict how many mentions your competition has, but you need to be conscious that you should have lots of mentions for all of your keywords, not just your title. But the number of times that the keyword appears increase where you end up in the search query. Yes?
I know this is strange, but people were giving clues to how to embellish getting written to the top, but people do embellish, and if they cut with too much stuff that really isn't relevant, and it comes up, and you vet that out, do you ever indicate this is BS? That you're with the, search for them?
Well, and let me rephrase the question. Do people in search filter the information that is provided in a LinkedIn profile? Well, we will read it, and we want to make sure that the information is accurate, so there's an ethical component of what you are writing. There's nothing unethical about your mentioning your title multiple times. There's nothing unethical about that at all. Did I answer your question?
Well, but in your mind, when you go through it, something that was right, obviously you make a phone call and find out the content. But is there a way that you would then communicate that somehow that other people don't know that something is not accurate? You guys work at, is there a way of you inputting somebody's profile to other people that maybe look and say, this is what
We don't necessarily communicate with other members of other search firms that potentially we have located an individual who is embellishing their profile that might not be truthful. We don't necessarily communicate that. All right? So, secret number 5, acronyms and abbreviations. The LinkedIn algorithm is not as smart as Google. And, we all have gotten used to Google, where we can put in a word and Google figures out that we've either misspelled it, typo error, or it is smart enough to know that if we're looking for a CFO, that it also means Chief Financial Officer. The LinkedIn algorithm is not that advanced and not that smart. Therefore, the LinkedIn algorithm demands that people like me, if we're looking for a CFO, we need to type in the acronym CFO. But if I want to continue to find individuals, I might be inclined to also do a query, run a query with the longer version of what CFO stands for, and that's Chief Financial Officer. Because LinkedIn is not that smart to say Chief Financial Officer also means CFO. Or Vice President, or Senior Vice President. LinkedIn does not know that that also means VP or SVP. People like me have to do both. So you should be conscious of that. And my recommendation for those of you who are trying to elevate your stature on search queries and get traction from your job search, make sure that you consider having not only CFO, the abbreviation, but also Chief Financial Officer. LinkedIn also does not identify words that are misspelled. So when I'm doing a query, I have to spell things correctly. If you're doing a query, by the way, make sure you are also spelling correctly in your search query. But basically, what I'm trying to say is the LinkedIn algorithm is not as smart as some of the more advanced search engines out there. So you need to be aware of how somebody like me would ultimately be utilizing, or what kinds of words might we use. Bless you. I believe I have some additional
Excuse me.
Yes,
One quick question before you move on.
yes.
Do any types of punctuation cause any problems? So if you have chief financial officer, parentheses, CFO, is that fine?
Well, and that's a really good question. Let's use CFO as the example, punctuation. Some people might put in their profile C period, F period, O period. We're not necessarily going to write it out that way. And again, the LinkedIn algorithm requires an exact match. Therefore, unless I type in my search query, C period, F period, O period, it will only look for individuals with that exact match in their profile. Now, getting into punctuation, like putting things in parentheses, LinkedIn does not count parentheses or commas. So or slashes. Some people like to put in VP / Vice President or Chief Financial Officer / CFO. That's okay. Or put it in parentheses. That's okay. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for asking that.
What about using, you kind of alluded to it, but what if it was interim CFO, interim controller? Is LinkedIn, will the algorithm look at that and say, oh no, I don't want that because you asked for CFO and this person said interim CFO?
I could do a query using Boolean search to eliminate the word interim. Chances are I'm not going to do that, but I could. Yes?
LinkedIn, can you let them know that you found something you think that they could correct, and then do they listen to people like you?
I do have communication with LinkedIn. I attend their annual meetings that I'm invited to. They have sometimes asked for opinions and advice. The kinds of things that some of us are doing and utilizing LinkedIn for doesn't always align with their goals. They are trying to generate revenue, and they generate revenue by subscriptions, paid search, and a variety of other things. So these little nuances of what the impact to somebody's profile is, it's far down on their list. Secret number 6, current role, current title, past roles, past titles. This is something important that you need to be aware of, and this is one of the reasons why, well, this is the second reason why I recommend that you have a placeholder for a current role with current titles. Because when somebody like me does a search, and we're looking for a CFO, and we get thousands of individuals in our query, the quickest way that we can pare down who exactly we are looking for in terms of a match is for us to designate, to only look for people who currently are a CFO. And one of the drop boxes under title is I can designate current or past. So you should be aware of that. And it holds true also for companies. Sometimes we look for individuals who come from a specific industry or have experience working at a specific company. For example, many of you in the room are CPAs. Potentially you began your career in public accounting. And we might be looking specifically for somebody who has large public accounting experience early on in their career. And we could, I'll pick, let's say, Deloitte as an example. I could specifically say that I'm looking for somebody who's currently a CFO, who in a past company has worked at specifically Deloitte. So a search query can really be very specific. So for those of you who started your careers in public accounting, be proud of that. And be proud of that on your LinkedIn profile, because it could theoretically impact individuals like me looking for somebody just like you. The other important thing about current role and past role is that potentially, if I'm looking for a CFO, some CFOs go on to be COOs and CEOs, and if in my search criteria I identify that I'm only looking for a CFO and I don't specify current or past, I might end up getting individuals in my search query who are currently CEOs. Well, those individuals really aren't my target. So that's another filter that I have at my disposal in order to identify individuals who truly are a fit.
Question.
Yes?
I've worked for companies that have morphed into Ernst & Young, Ernst & Young,
Right.
EY, Continental Illinois Bank, and the Sanwa Bank and so forth. After a while, my hand gets tired putting in more from 1 to 2 to 3. What's your recommendation in terms of that, or do you put all the companies that historically what they've worked with?
That's a really good question. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer for that. I would say that you're better off thinking a little strategically about utilizing the most common name for a company. That would be my recommendation. There's no need to have all of the different iterations of names. If the organization ultimately is now part of EY, do you really need to say Ernst & Young, and first it was Ernst & Ernst, and all the different iterations? I think it's more important just to have one, unless it's vastly different, but there's no right or wrong answer. Yes?
Well, doesn't it say, like, if you updated your profile years ago, you go back on some of that history and put the current names in, because somebody's not going to search on Ernst & Young anymore.
Correct. Most individuals would not do a query under Ernst & Ernst, but you were there when it was Ernst & Ernst. I personally, because you've got plenty of character space, when you were there, Ernst & Ernst, and then in parentheses now, Ernst & Young or EY. Yes?
What about, say, you've worked for a company and they've spun off a number of times, but you've stayed in the same job for 12 years, right? But the company's name has changed 5 times. Do you put that in as 5 separate positions in your profile? It looks like maybe your job hopping? Or how do you do that with the company name and the different, because you've been in the same company for that one period of time?
If you've been in a company for a long period of time and the company name has changed because of acquisitions or whatnot, definitely identify each of those companies, because it also shows that you have longevity at a company. Certainly for a company that has morphed in terms of name, you can identify the new name and say acquired by, or whatever the corporate life-changing event was. And just to be a little more specific for the reader and your audience, in case they aren't aware, if you have also had a change in title during that tenure, at this one organization that morphed in terms of name, make sure that you modify your change in title as well. That will certainly help you. That shows that if you've gotten promotions with each organization, perhaps you had increased level of responsibility because of the financial controls, the P&L that you were part of, perhaps that grew. That's always something that people in search like to see. Increased responsibility. If you got promoted, make sure that you mention that it was a promotion. Those are good things to quietly talk about because it paints a picture about you, your value to your organization, that you stayed there regardless of, or in addition to the fact that they went through a lot of change. Okay? Any other questions before we go on to secret number 7? Secret number 7, connections matter. You really should be connecting with lots of individuals. You should be aware that the more people you are connected to, the greater visibility you have to the rest of the world out there. I know that many individuals feel that they should only be connected to those people who they truly know. And that's very fair. But still try to increase your connections to whether it's direct connections or even part of groups. You can be connected to up to 50 groups. And if you're not connected to 50 groups, look at all the groups that are out there. Yes, Dan?
Has that number changed? 50, it's always been
50. 50 is the maximum. If you look at all the different groups that are out there, there are some international finance groups that are huge. If you just pick one of those very large groups, you suddenly are connected to lots more people, indirectly, by being part of the group. But think about direct connections and group connections, and keep building on those numbers.
Excuse me.
Yes.
So does the quantity of connections is that involved in the LinkedIn algorithm in terms of when you as a recruiter are searching? Does that have any impact on that?
It does not have impact in terms of increasing your standing, but the number of connections does impact your visibility and your capability of being found, because you now have visibility by more individuals. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes?
What value do you put on skill endorsements and recommendations from others?
Recommendations, meaning those individuals who have actually written something about you. People like me read those, but let's face it, you're only going to post and have visible recommendations that are positive and that they're meaningful, and they are going to be positive. Will they be meaningful? Hopefully they will be. So yes, they are valuable. The other, they're not called recommendations. And the endorsements, I believe they don't impact the level of standing, at least not yet. It is possible that LinkedIn is building in some functionality that they might turn on in the future to link the number of endorsements with how high up you end up coming. But I haven't seen anything yet. Right now it doesn't impact. Yes?
So let's say if you're doing a search and you have mergers and acquisitions as one of your criteria. So if somebody doesn't have mergers and acquisitions in their profile, but they've been endorsed for mergers and acquisitions, you're saying they might not necessarily get picked up?
If the endorsement, if the recommendation specifically
Yeah,
says,
not saying not a recommendation, let's just say the only thing is down in endorsements, and somebody's been endorsed many times for mergers and acquisitions. but they don't have in their profile, they don't have in their resume.
It probably will, right now, it won't make a big impact. I want to go through a few more things regarding LinkedIn. We already talked about some of the implications to your profile, and that you should use all the job titles. I created a profile that included the word headhunter. Now, I don't consider myself a headhunter, but if you think about individuals looking for a recruiter or looking for a headhunter, chances are they might do a search query for headhunter, and therefore if I want to be found by somebody like you as a headhunter, if the word is not in my profile, I won't be found for it. So I put that in there to make a point. I don't consider myself a headhunter. I consider myself an executive search professional, a recruiter. So think about these implications in your profile. Your profile should also resonate with your audience. Your audience, first and foremost, is a recruiter, but secondly, a CHRO, a CEO, and potentially members of a board. Because in this day and age, people look at resumes, but they also look at LinkedIn profiles. If your name has come up, and potentially somebody has said, oh, you should talk to James Miranda for a CFO role, the name comes up, the individual, that CEO, might go to LinkedIn and try and get a sense of what his background is before he even calls him. So think about those implications that your your LinkedIn profile should resonate with your audience. And by resonating with the audience, you should think about size of company, again, the corporate life-changing events that you've been part of, the revenue that you have been responsible for, how you have supported your previous CEOs, etc. And just to recap, the algorithm rates the keywords located first in the summary title, then in the current job, and then in past jobs, then in your summary, and so on and so forth. Yes?
I see under your titles, you then have a statement about, say, successful executive, blah, 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 in caps. Is there any reason for that?
No, caps or no caps, that does not impact visibility at all. It's how you want your visibility is the wrong word. Just how you want it to look. Some people put arrows, some people put stars, check marks, all different kinds of things to make a LinkedIn profile look a little bit different. But what really counts are the words. I also recommend that you use industry generic descriptions. Sometimes over the course of somebody's career, you might have had a role that was titled very uniquely, but to the outside world it really doesn't mean anything. In those cases, I recommend that you include whatever the title might be generically. And forgive me, I can't think of an example at this very moment in time. I think I need another cup of coffee. Yes?
Well, this wasn't industry specific, but for some reason 20-something years ago, I was given the title of treasurer of a very small, sub $2 million company. I was basically the CFO. but they gave me the title of treasurer. And I had that on my resume for 18 years. And when I started my transition, updating my resume and profile, and I got this, I think, from the information you had sent me a few weeks ago, I'm like, why am I calling it treasurer? That makes it sound like all I did was cash and investing money, and I did pretty much none of that, so I changed it to CFO.
That's a great example. Now, ethically, you should have an actual title, but there's nothing wrong with your describing yourself also as the accurate CFO in his case. I do caution you, if you currently are doing consulting work, that if in your current title or past titles, if you have the word consultant really, for individuals in search, a consultant potentially means something different than acting as or interim CFO or interim FP&A or whatever. There's really a difference. So I just caution you to use the word consultant in a title or self-employed and in transition. Because people like me are not going to be, if we're looking for a consultant, it might be maybe an IT consultant, something like that. All right?
But if you're like a CFO consultant or a management consultant, put a title to the consultant as opposed to just putting consultant.
Putting a title, putting additional words in addition to the word consultant, absolutely. That's all right, but not just standalone consultant. Finally, for those who are not currently in a job where you are CFO of a specific company, and if I find you on LinkedIn, I can call the main number and ask for you specifically, I do recommend that you include contact information right in your summary. Contact information in a LinkedIn profile is visible only to your direct connections, and that's all the way down at the bottom, or at the top, depending on which version of profile you're actually utilizing. So if you want somebody like me to call you, make it easy for me. Give me your telephone number, give me your email address, right in your summary. Speaking of contact information, I do want to share mine before we go into Q&A. My best number to reach me at is 847-962-1333, and my email address is JULIE, that's Julie, .f.roth@att.net. And if you send me an email, I will send you the article version of this presentation. I also have another article that I call 7 Insights, which is additional information about LinkedIn, such as how to turn your notifications on and off, because it's very important that you turn them off before you start making changes to your profile. And there are a variety of other insights that I like to share that people find helpful. So send me an email, I will send you the articles, and if we're not connected via LinkedIn, by all means send me a LinkedIn connection invitation. So now it's question and answer time. I'm happy to answer any additional questions that anybody might have about LinkedIn. Yes?
So on the notifications, I understand what it means to turn them off if you're going to make some adjustments and you don't want 5 million.
Right.
But if you are going into transition and you are going to use, instead of independent consultants, words you've used before, you're going to update a title, would it be a good thing to turn on that notification when you then switch your role, all of your connections can then understand that? So it's basically a mass notification.
It's up to you if you want to keep your notifications on and off. There are some situations, if you currently are employed but looking for a new opportunity, or if you're going to be going into your profile multiple times to make changes, you don't necessarily want to let your connections know every 5 minutes when you've made a connection. You've changed your picture, you changed a title here, you changed education. Sometimes it's a little bit too much. You should basically just be aware that if you don't turn off your notifications, and that's all under your settings, if you go to your, I don't know if you're following along, if you go under privacy and settings, that's where most of the information is on the 7 insights about notifications, where you can turn things on and off. Did I answer your question?
Partly, but for the folks in the room here who are already into transition, who are going to take your advice, change the title or CFO, parentheses, etc., get rid of independent consultants and do whatever, once you finalize what you want to say, I think it might make, I don't know, I'm asking your opinion. It makes sense to me then to take that privacy setting off, turn it on or whatever, so that when you make that, people can understand who might be in your network to want to help you, that you have a new type. And they can then look at it and say, oh, okay, maybe they're in new transition. This is individual preference?
It's individual preference. One thing you should be aware of, that when you send out notifications, just like when you post an update, it goes out to your network, but LinkedIn has changed how individuals communicate with one another. And if I were to post an update or change my profile, and it goes out to my complete network, all of you who would be in my network actually would have to read all the way down here. You'd have to go through every single piece of information in order to find the fact that I have just updated my profile. So chances are I'm not going to see it. So you just should be aware of that. But it does, one comment that really is outside of LinkedIn, and that is keep up with your network. You're doing wonderful things in order to build your network. Don't quit communicating with your network on a regular basis, because you want to be top of mind. And the way that LinkedIn is working these days in terms of how individuals communicate with one another in a group, it's sort of cumbersome to go through all of these updates. While I've been talking, I just got 20 updates from, or over 20, from different individuals. It takes a lot of time for me to go into LinkedIn and look at all these updates. And these updates incorporate information such as people reposting an article, or changing their profile, or a new connection. Some of the information is pertinent and some of it is not pertinent. It takes time for me to go through all of it. Yes?
I wanted to just confirm whether or not what's something that I heard, regardless of how you change your settings, your current title, you change that will appear here.
I don't believe so. I think when you turn off your notifications, everything gets turned off. Yes?
Just a question. When you're in transition, how much would you recommend to put on your LinkedIn profile vis-a-vis your resume? So you've got your resume, all the details, the accomplishments, and then on the LinkedIn profile, people, it's interesting to see how people use it. They look for any information, just title, others put a lot of bullet points. Do you have any recommendations to how much granularity you should put on that profile?
That is a great question. And my recommendation for you, since you are in transition, The more information you have on your LinkedIn profile, the greater the chance that all of those keywords that I might be looking for, that I'm searching, that putting in my query, are going to be in there. And so if you do not have a fully built out profile, you're doing yourself a disservice potentially if you're excluding many of these keywords that might be in there. The LinkedIn profile is a wonderful place for people like me in search to get a sense of who you are, what you've done, what you've accomplished, and I get a snapshot. It's also a wonderful place where everyone can tell their story. So a LinkedIn profile doesn't necessarily need to be cut and dry and just 2 pages, just like a resume. It can be lengthy. You can tell your story. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, I talk about how I'm a former marketing executive and I turned recruiter, and how I utilize all of my experiences in the area of search. And I tell a story because it's important. And that's the beauty of LinkedIn. But make sure that under each role and title, you include accomplishments, capabilities, what you were responsible for if you want. It can be an expanded version of your resume.
Can I just answer what I tell our clients, Raj? I believe you should have a lot, just like Julie says, you want recruiters to be able to capture it and do all kinds of searches and scans. But they give you an awful lot of room in the summary section of LinkedIn. And I like to see people move up some of their key accomplishments to the summary portion right up front. That's one of the things on LinkedIn is you don't want people to have to scroll too far down to find it. So I think most of you should have handles too for networking. A lot of what you typically put in a networking handle you might put in the summary section. But they leave you a lot of space in the summary, and then people can see that right away without having to scroll down too far.
How much time would you spend looking at a bullet point? You know, resumes is like 6 seconds, as an average. How long would you spend looking at it?
It depends. It depends on the search. I mean, technology allows a lot of filtering. If I'm looking for a specific capability, I might use the technology in order to screen for those words. It really depends.
You give us a lot of great pointers on how to move up in the rankings when you do a search, and now let's say you've got a short list. You tell us there's certain things you might look for in a profile beyond what you talked about, things like, stuff down more in the bottom, or what kind of things do you look for when you go through a profile?
We'll look at the complete profile. We'll look at what have you done most recently, what is relevant. If what I read in terms of the most current experiences, if they resonate and if they are what we are looking for, I'll continue to read. I'll look at what people have said, etc. I know we're right at 9 o'clock. I'll take 2 more quick questions and then we'll cut this off. But I'll be here. You can come up after the fact and ask me some questions.
Should we pay for a premium account?
You do not need to pay for a premium account.
Is LinkedIn your primary source for finding candidates?
Finding good candidates is a multi-pronged approach. There's reaching out to the network and industry sources. Certainly LinkedIn, from a technology standpoint, is a very powerful tool. And from a technology standpoint, it's up there. One more question.
So to the point about the premium account, right? So one of the things that I do, and I'm sure a lot of people use that email feature where you contact somebody, and I think you need a premium account for that feature, right, to have the certain amount of emails. do you recommend using, just reaching out to somebody saying, hey, I'm transitioning, or, we know somebody in common, or, what's your approach with using InMail? Do you recommend doing that, or?
The response rate for InMail, and this comes directly from LinkedIn, the response rate for InMail is very small. It's like 10%. So think about that. Is it worth the effort for you to send an InMail when chances are you're not going to get a response?
Better is to click on contact information, and many people that are thinking have their personal email under contact information. You'll get a lot quicker response than an InMail, because like now I check my LinkedIn maybe once every 10 days, and even then I've got, it can be a month before I reply to some of the InMails. So, but my Gmail I look at every day.
Right.
I hope that all of you have really gotten some good tidbits out of the information that I've shared with you. And I loved your enthusiasm with all the variety of questions, and I thank you so much. I will be here if you have any specific questions that you want answered. By all means, I'm at your service.